next with our next presenter. Thank you so much, Debbie. Okay, our next presenter is from Switzerland, Jawad Alzeer. Dr. Alzeer has completed his PhD from Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in 1996 and completed his postdoc in medicinal chemistry from Michigan University. He's the managing director of Swiss Scientific Society for Developing Countries, and his research interests include drug design, holistic medicine, and activation of the immune system. The title of his talk today is the implementation of the Le-Chatelier principle and the dispersion of potential energy can be used as a method to prevent and or cure COVID-19. Okay, hi, Dr. Alzeer, please start your presentation.
All right, thanks a lot for the organization. And thanks for being part of this conference. If I don't hear any feedback, it means everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear.
Well, indeed, today I would like to discuss two things. Well, first of all, I would like to share with you my proposed concept for medicine. And also, I would like to discuss with you the key elements of these concepts and how we can use those elements to prevent or cure coronavirus. So if we go to now, the concept is called Halalopathy, but before going that, I would like to tell you, initially, I'm a chemist, so I am interested in designing always a drug for the market. And I was always interested in, let's say that the market is already almost saturated with the new drugs. And whenever we see there is a new drug in the market, and look at the therapeutic value of the new drug compared to the existing drug, we notice that the therapeutic value is always very little or very limited. Therefore, my interest moved toward how we could make the existing drug more effective. And if we think of cancer and cancer therapy, well, one point is we know that the concept of complete recovery does not exist in cancer therapy. They always use the concept of this complete remission, and indeed this is also another point which I was always thinking why we still do not have a sort of cure which could really offer a complete recovery for the patient. And we also cannot ignore a good and successful stories by people whom they had cancer and they defeated cancer. And when those people or those cases are discussed with the doctors, usually you find two types of doctors. Some, they do not believe that those people had cancer, so there was a sort of error in the diagnosis. And the other, they do believe that they had cancer, but there's something unusual happened to their immune system. And that's why they call this type of therapy as a miraculous recovery. And, you know, miracle is something which cannot be reproduced or regenerated. And that is why also I start thinking why we cannot reproduce this type of recovery or miraculous recovery. So studying most of those people whom they succeeded to defeat cancer, you will notice that mainly they use, they did not completely depends on the chemotherapy, but they added something else. So they changed their lifestyles completely, and they strictly followed their new lifestyles. And of course, they practice some sports, whether it is like yoga or meditation or sort of a spiritual sport. So I came to conclusion, yes, indeed, it seems the drug is playing a role, but probably it's not the main role. And the main role is coming from if we could create the favorable circumstances for a cure. And this is something which I am really interested in, and I wanted to look for it. To understand what is going on and look for something which is really important in our body. So I studied two processes which I believe they are the most important processes in our bodies, the anabolic and the catabolic processes. Being a chemist, so I started looking at them from chemical point of view and what is going on really inside. Now, if we just simplify what's going on with the catabolic reactions, there is a large molecule or a macromolecules, which usually has a high potential and rich with information, goes through a reaction where this large molecule is broken down to many small molecules. Now, if you follow this reaction, you will notice that this reaction is spontaneous. So it means that you don't need really energy to promote this reaction. You need just to catalyze it. But on the contrary, this reaction produces a lot of energy. For example, one molecule of glucose can generate around 38 units of ATP. But along with that, a lot of entropy has been generated during this reaction. And this reaction is spontaneous because it is entropy driven. Now, if you think of the opposite reaction, which is the anabolic reaction, which is the growth reaction. Now, this reaction, basically what it does, it just collects all these small molecules, which has low potential and which is already in the high entropy. It is collected and then build totally a new molecule with high potential and which is rich in information. Now, this process is not spontaneous. It's not easily promoted. So therefore, it required a very high amount of potential energy for this reaction to proceed. That's why we believe this reaction is potential energy driven. Now, my conclusion is the most important key elements in these two processes is potential energy and entropy. Now, what is potential energy? Potential energy is the capability of us to do the work. Now, this energy could be present in different forms, but once it is dispersed or suppressed, it will move to entropy. Now, entropy, it is a form of dispersed or suppressed form of energy, but it does not produce work. Indeed, its presence in the body is harmful, and it just increases the heat in our body, and that's why it's an indicator for our body how much we have disorder inside our body, how much we have randomness in our body, and this is also the more it is accumulated, the more we have a chance to get disease. Now, obviously, Halalopathy in this case, they started focusing on these two concepts, and the goal is very simple: how to enrich the potential energy in our body, because the more we have the potential energy enriched, the more we have a coordinated moves with our molecules in our body, so they work together, but not in a dispersed or in a suppressed world, as it is in the case of entropy. Now, if you take what's going on, for example, when the entropy is increased in our body, the heat is also increased, and once the heat is increased, we have so many proteins, and proteins are susceptible to heat, and usually the native proteins, which is fully functional, which is rich of information, which is very well self-assembled, once it is exposed to heat, it starts denatured, and by denaturing, so you will get more rotation of the residue, you lose information, and entropy is also increased in this way, and that's why the proteins start losing functions. And those proteins, in this case, either they become dysfunctional, and this is how we start, either developing disease, or by time how we can how we can become old. Now, the question is how to control the situation in our body, how to enrich this potential energy, and how to avoid having a lot of entropy in our body. Now, entropy cannot be eliminated in the body. The only thing we can do is we can slow down the process in a way that we can have a sort of healthy life and healthy aging. Now, according to Halalopathy, we believe that human can live in 3 different moods. one mood, which is the most interesting one. It is the high potential mood, where people in general are basically have high potential energy, and this high potential energy let them or give them the possibility to be productive in all direction, and the most important, that their immune system is very healthy and has always enough energy to fight a disease. Now, the other two moods where people mainly can also be present is both moods are the so-called the high entropic moods. Now, if we, let's say, start having a sort of more worry in our life, and we start scaring from the future, we generate a lot of neurotransmitters, which are mainly excitatory. So it will speed up our reactions in our body, and it will make the electrical activity in our brain is higher. Now, this is a high risk situation because the potential energy has been dispersed. So there is energy, but it is being dispersed. It's not anymore working in a coordinated way. Now, if this is for a short time, there's no problem. But if what is meant to be temporary become a permanent, then this is a disease. And that's why people whom they live in such type of situation, they will develop a sort of anxiety. Similarly, if the people are very always sad and feeling regret and always, very upset from their past, this is also not good. This will accelerate the neurotransmitters, which has, the potential to inhibit our electrical activity in our brain. So everything will slow down. That's why people with this type of behavior, they would like always to sleep most of the time. Now, if it is again temporary, there is no problem. But if it is for a long time, this is a disease which is called depression. So now, according to Halalopathy, the key of diseases are really how long we can keep our self in the two stages, either the anxiety or the depressions. And of course, if you want to protect yourself from these type from diseases or to improve your preventions, you have to activate the high potential phase. It is the phase which I call it. It is the no fear and no grief state. So I think we have the potential to resist fear and grief, and it's in our hand. But if we know that this will lead us really to highly risky situations, so we should really fight strongly the fear and grief, and try always to live the reality, which will give us a huge potential. Now, this is of course important. Why? Because immune system is basically playing the main role in recovery in all directions. Drug is important, but it is not the main role. And now we have, the question is how to keep this immune system active. Immune system can be in different modes, and the best mode is the fighting mode. So fighting mode, it means this immune system has enough energy to fight and to detect if there is any error. And if it is there, it will be repaired. But now, if you suppressed this energy or you disperse this energy, what will happen? So in case of dispersion, you still have energy, you are in the excited mood, but this energy is not anymore working in a coordinated path. So that's why your immune system is not working perfectly. If there is an error, might be detected, might not be detected. If it is not detected, it will be bypassed, and then on the long run, it will develop disease. Similarly, if we are completely in depression mood, where the potential energy is highly suppressed, and in this case, our immune system will be in the flight mood, almost disconnected. And even if there is any error in the body, it will not be detected and it will be bypassed. And this is again will develop a disease. So that's why we have to keep our immune system always in the fighting mood, in the high potential, and we have to fight as much as we can the fear and sadness. So in case we got disease, what to do now? As you know, that from the cancer therapy, if you want to depend only on the chemotherapy or radiation or surgery, this is only one value. It will not really lead you to complete recovery. If you want to have a complete recovery, you have to add and added values to your treatment course. So that's why Halalopathy believe that yes, it is possible, and this could be possible by building a connection between the patients and the therapeutic drug. So every patient has a sort of lifestyle, and this lifestyle is varied from person to person, and then we can connect the lifestyle with the drug in a way that we can personalize the therapy, and it is not very complicated. Now, if people, for example, they are vegetarian, they are vegan, and they don't eat any source of meat, then we can offer them a drug. We can make sure that this drug is clear and clean from any animal ingredients. And it's very important to write on this drug that it is vegan. So we have to use the power of words. So the patient who believe in vegan, look at this drug and read that it is vegan. So try to build a compatible system. Now this compatible system has a very high energy, and it is a very highly ordered system. So it will lower your entropy, and it will enhance your potential energy. And beside that, your trust in the drug will become more effective. And with regard to the lifestyles, we have so many lifestyles. We have the vegan, we have the kosher, we have the halal, and there are also people whom they are sensitive from certain chemicals, like people, diabetes, they're sensitive from glucose. People are sensitive from gluten and lactose. So I think utilizing these connections, we can create a sort of compatible system between the drug and people's lifestyle. Now, once we have trust in this therapeutic system or therapeutic drug, and this trust will accelerate the anabolic effect. So now we created anabolic effect. This is an effect which people believe around 30% has an added value in the therapy. We have already a therapeutic effect. God knows how much it has in the therapy, but it has an effect. And the most important, we build a compatible system. So we have a homogeneous effect where people take what is compatible with what they believe. Now, we have 3 effects. If you add them together in your body, you don't have 3 effects. You have always a synergistic effect. It could be 4 and it could be 10. And these synergistic effects will really push you to achieve a complete recovery. So now to implement this concept for fighting Corona, now I guess everybody is educated with what's going on with Corona, and people, they have more informations about Corona more than scientists, but the difference that scientists, they try to process this information compared to the normal people. Now, we know that in this situation, when you want to fight Corona, you have 2 options. Either we have to develop a vaccine, which we have developed, and the other option is to create a sort of an antiviral drug, which is not yet available, which probably very difficult to create an antiviral drug because we have a mRNA virus, which this RNA keep on moving very quickly, and that's why it probably will resist the drug quickly. And now with regard to the vaccine, this is what is the only option we have, but the vaccine is not a cure. It is just used as a preventive tool that the virus will be limited on the long run. I guess the majority believe also maybe the best way, if we want to fight the virus, how we can accelerate our immune system. And immune system, of course, everybody trusts in his immune system, but the question is how, if we want to activate the immune system, we should take into consideration that it's only possible if the immune system is in the highly potential mood. And I have already discussed how to accelerate this highly potential mood. Now, if you think of the virus is around us. Now, we all know that in chemistry and in medicine, we know that the dose determines the toxicity. So the amount is really the one which is playing role. Now, if you have a very little virus in your body around you, it will not affect unless it reach a certain threshold in your body or around you, and then it start having this infection. So clearly that the virus has let's say the energy the virus is using to spread among us is potential energy, because once the virus load is increased, it has high potential energy, and then it becomes very aggressive. And if you see that once we develop coronavirus in our body, so the virus inside ourselves start increasing, the virus load increase, and then once we increase the virus load inside, we also increase the virus load around us. And the more we increase the virus load inside, we increase the virus load outside, and this is of course how the virus is transmitted from one person to another person. Now this process and this movement is natural, is spontaneous, because it is driven by entropy. The virus is moving from a high concentration, which is inside, to the low concentration, which is outside. Now it makes sense, of course, to, if you are infected with coronavirus, to wear a mask, because wearing a mask is very important. And in this case, without a mask, of course, the virus is working in a highly coordinated way. The virus is working in a highly coordinated way, and that's why it could infect other people very easily. And it will have a high potential, but once you wear a mask, the virus is dispersed in all direction. It's not anymore working in a coordinated way, and that's why its potential is lost, and that's why the infections of others also it will be decreased. That's why it makes sense really to wear a mask. Now the question is how the distance and the distance between people whom they are, let's say, not wearing a mask, how much it is really dangerous. And if you notice that if one person is infected and the other person is not infected, they meet together. So the virus load outside those two people will be increased, and once it is increased, it will have the potential to spread to the person who is not infected, and this is how basically infection is started. And that's why really, so keeping distances makes sense, putting a mask also makes sense. Now the question is how this disease progress. So once person is infected, so the virus inside is higher, the virus load is inside is higher than the virus load outside, and by time, of course, if nothing happens, so the virus start occupying cells inside our body and start regenerating itself. So the virus load is start increasing inside, simultaneously increasing outside, and then it reach a threshold where the stress has been created on, and this stress will make the immune system, the potential energy is dispersed, because in the presence of this stress, the immune system is not working anymore effectively. And then, of course, symptoms start developing in a highly severe way. Now, this is how it goes normally. And the question is how to reverse this process. Now, to reverse this process, of course, we have to find ways how to reduce the virus inside the body. And we know that if the virus is reduced inside the body, it is also reduced outside the body. Now the question is, if we ask the question, if we reduce the virus outside the body, does it also reduce the virus inside the body or not? And if it is, then we can go back slowly by just reducing the virus load outside the patients. And then we can go back and then we cross the threshold where people have the potential, let's say, to their immune system will become active, and then they can deal with this situation normally. Now, that's why here I introduced the concept of Le-Chatelier principle. Le-Chatelier principle believe that every system is in an equilibrium. Now, let's take this example. So let's say that we have a beaker, there is water, and we know that there is a sort of water vapor just sitting on the surface of the water. Classically, according to the Le-Chatelier principle, the evaporation of water and condensation of the water is in equilibrium. So the rate is equal. That's the normal and classical and the balanced way. Now, if we just assume that water liquid is just the virus load inside the patient and the water vapor is the virus load outside the patient, and now if we introduce an external stress which can disperse the water vapor, and the water vapor, which is on the surface of the water liquid, and now having a fan, and so the air will just disperse the water vapor. So in other words, so the virus load outside will be also dispersed, for example. And then what happens, the water liquid evaporate faster than it condensed, because it has to bring back the equilibrium, and this is how it should. And this is because now there is something which is unusual happens, and this equilibrium need to return back, and that's why the best way is just to move water liquid to water vapor. And this evaporation will continue as long as the external stress is working. Once it is removed, what we will notice that the water liquid has been decreased and the water vapor also has been decreased, but the equilibrium has been retained. Now the evaporation and the condensation is the same, but in this case, we think that so the water liquid, which represent the virus load inside, has been decreased, let's say, and then it is beyond the threshold that could create an infection. Now, so what is the external stress? The external stress is disinfectant. We know that we have so many disinfectants around us, but those mainly disinfectants are not very healthy, because they use like ethanol, which could create a sort of addiction. So that's why I started looking for an alternative disinfectant, and I came to the conclusion that sodium bicarbonate is a well-known solution which is documented to fight viruses, fungi, and bacteria. And my goal is to create a buffer system, and this buffer system which has a pH of 7.4. So I work on finding the right mixture, and I came to conclusion that having a 3% sodium bicarbonate, 2% sodium chloride, with 3% vinegar or 0.15% acetic acid, if you add them together, you have a buffer system with a pH 7.4, which is very similar to our blood pH. Now, this mixture is very compatible to our body, and this is exactly the same buffer we have it in the blood, the bicarbonate buffer. Now, how to implement this method? We can implement this method by using a sort of a humidifier which has a mixture, and we assume this person is infected with coronavirus, and then we just have the humidifier which will turn the mixture which is in water into vapor. And now once we have the vapor, this vapor will disperse the virus load which is in front of the patient. And once it is dispersed, so the virus load will decrease, and to replace this decreased in virus load outside, so the virus from inside has to move to outside. This process is spontaneous because it moved from high concentration to low concentration, so it does not require energy. It is driven by entropy. And if we continue using these humidifier, and then till the virus load really comes down to a threshold where the immune system is not anymore under stress, so it can take care of the rest of the virus in our body, and then continue with this, and continue, let's say, just get rid of the virus inside, and then you get rid of the coronavirus on the long run if this process is continued. So I have tested this with many people in my circle, and I noticed that so if you got the symptoms, and if you just do this for 3 minutes, 3 times a day, 1 day is enough to get rid of all the symptoms. And if you start having really partial symptoms, so you need like 3 days. If it is severe symptoms, you need 5 days, each time 3 minutes. Now, the interesting of this method is different than the vaccine, because it fight the virus non-selective, non-specific. What with case of with the vaccine, it is selective and specific. So if the virus change, then we have to change the vaccine. But if in this case the virus change, you don't have to change the mixture, because it always deal with the virus in a non-specific, non-selective way. No matter what virus is mutated, it will work with it very effectively. It has been implemented with my circle, so I know many people, they got extremely very remarkable results, and I use it every day as a prevention. And the mixture is very cheap, almost present at every home. if you don't have these humidifiers, some people, they just boil the mixture and inhale the vapor, which is also working. I basically gathered all these informations and publish it in paper and make it public for those whom they would like to use it. And if anybody would, but of course, the best way, we need to make a sort of a clinical trials. Until now, I don't have any possibility to do this clinical trial, but if anybody is interested to cooperate with me for clinical trials, I'll be happy to be part of that. Thanks for your attention and wish you best of luck.